Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Jason Johnson, and my guest today is Annie Bosco, who is a local creative here in Austin, Texas. And Annie, again, thank you for joining me today. To start things off, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, who Annie is, and what some of your creative focuses are currently.
Yeah, so I'm Annie Bosco. I think most people know me as a musician and singer-songwriter, but I do a lot of different things in that world. Lately I've been putting together a lot of different like intimate concert experiences where I share some of my music, but I also bring in other local artists to share theirs, as well as poetry and storytelling. Um, and the goal is just to like bring creative, expressive community together. But I myself express primarily through music. That's through songwriting, through playing different instruments. I play primarily guitar, but also keys, and then a bunch of other kind of lesser known instruments. But I also write. Sometimes that's songs, sometimes that's spoken word or poetry. Sometimes it's just ramblings.
Whatever the creative juices lead to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. One of the things I tell people about Austin that I appreciate are like the different events um, where people are creating community, right? And like you're a part of that community and an active part of that community. So one, thank you for doing that, and creating those spaces for folks in Austin to take advantage of.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. With that being said, um, tell me a little bit about when you probably first noticed that you were such a creative being. Like, I don't know if there was something when you were a child where
Mhm.
you have like fond memories of just like being creative and kind of latching onto that, and that's what's kind of helped pave the way for the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like I got really lucky in the sense that I grew up surrounded by creativity, surrounded by musicians and artists. Um, I have seven siblings, and we pretty much all have some sort of creative endeavor that we're all pursuing. But that started with my parents. My parents are both singers. My dad's a songwriter and plays guitar and has my whole life. And they've like done music together for, you know, 50 years basically. Um, so I just grew up in that environment. I honestly didn't know it was special until I stepped out of that environment when I moved away and realized like, oh, it's not just automatic creative community everywhere. And
Yeah.
that's why I started building that. It was because I missed that like built-in expression with other people and just kind of like merging different ideas and collaborating. But I mean, I've been like singing since I could talk. I used to like open the front door just like singing at whoever was there. Usually it was like the mailman.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know that there was like a specific moment. I think really I just kind of had this unique opportunity to just grow into that. Um, I was like writing songs since I was, I don't know, probably like 9. I started playing guitar when I was 11. Um, and those were kind of some of the first things that got me started into my own personal journey. But really, I also was homeschooled, and so I think that was part of it. I was homeschooled for elementary school. So I had, again, this like unique opportunity to like express myself in different ways than a lot of my peers.
Hmm.
Like some of my like homework assignments were very, you know, not your typical homework assignments, and they involved like writing poems or like singing songs. Um, and I also just grew like I grew up in a church environment, and I think that also tends to foster a lot of music. At least my experience of it did. And so even with that, like I just grew up singing songs with other people, which again I kind of took for granted until I grew up and then was like, oh, that's you have to like find that.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting that you called like those things out because I remember in our class we had a discussion about how we're all born creative, but it's about whether or not, that creativity is fostered as you're
Yeah.
writing. A lot of times when you go to elementary school, you start listening to like what your teacher says to like keep students in line, or what
Yeah,
kind of peer pressure you experience from your classmates. And sometimes that can stifle creativity, right?
totally.
So the fact that you highlighted, one, being in a house full of creatives, but also like being homeschooled and not having that external pressure as much to conform, I'm sure that, or I imagine that that helped only like, I don't know, foster the creativity that you even display today. So,
Yeah,
yeah, really cool to
absolutely.
call that out.
I was kind of like a creative wild child. I was
Yeah.
kind of, I was pretty obnoxious with it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was like I said, I was like singing at people.
Hmm.
Um, so I definitely got some like weird reactions from that. But I agree. I think like we're all creative. Everyone has that within them, and there's so many different ways that that can be expressed. Um, and like who knows, for me, I was surrounded by music, so that's obviously like the path that was kind of carved for me. But even some of my siblings like leaned way more into like theater or like some of my brothers are artists, like sketch artists and comic artists and like all of these different things. So it is like we still did kind of find our own routes to pursue. And that's a big reason I started fostering that within communities because like I realized like not everyone had that opportunity that I had to like have people like encouraging you to be like, yeah, share it. Like,
Yeah.
please share it. Somebody needs to hear this. And like also it's not about always hearing. It's like sometimes you just need to express things.
Yeah.
Like, you need to
Yeah.
get them out
Get them out.
in
Yeah.
whatever way.
Yeah. That's how I, started my like writing. I started writing poetry when I was a kid because I could not, I didn't know how to process my emotions
Yeah.
sometimes. And
Yeah.
sometimes when I would show emotion, I would get strange looks like, in my community, it's like, you're a man, you're a black man, like you shouldn't be showing emotion. You should be like strong, and there were names you would get called for showing certain emotions, and so like I held those things back a lot when I was a kid, and it just got to a
Yeah.
point where like I needed to let those out in some way. And so that's why I turned to poetry when I was a kid, because I like to describe my poetry as a quick like slap in the face. Um, for me, it's not like I don't like to follow any rules. Like it's just like an emotional like gut punch.
I
Um,
love that.
when I write. So
That's
and
what it should be. Like
yeah,
it should,
yeah,
you shouldn't be following rules. Like I'm always such an advocate of like telling everyone like there's no wrong way to do it. Like
yeah,
there's maybe a more correct technical way of doing things, but like please just do it. Don't worry about the rules because honestly like that can really throw you off a lot of times. It's like because you get into this part of your brain where you're like overthinking it or you're thinking like how am I supposed to write versus just like letting it actually flow through you
yeah, yeah.
organically.
I'm curious. You mentioned once you kind of left your creative bubble back home that you realize, okay, this isn't what it's like everywhere.
Yeah.
Was that a hard realization or a hard transition to
Oh
make in
yeah.
terms of your creative journey, like moving from that house where everything was fostered into like the broader world? And
Real
what
world.
was that? Yeah, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely startling. I feel like it took me a minute to like recognize what exactly was different. Like I felt different, but I was just like, I don't know, I moved away, I guess. But then like once I started to kind of like get glimpses of it again, like meeting other musicians or people that were like pursuing their art, then I was like, oh yeah, wait. I used to like have this like so built into my life, and now it's like I'm having to like actively pursue. And even that like endeavor, like there's something really cool about growing up, like the kind of bond, the musical bonds that I formed like with my siblings were just like we could just like snap into place. Like we would just show up and start singing and it's like we have suddenly like this three-part harmony that nobody planned for. And like that was really special. It's almost like because we're just used to each other's styles and whatever it is, like we could just immediately find where to go versus like bringing a whole new human into that. It's like you have to like recalibrate and like figure out how to like collaborate with people. And so that's another thing that I kind of took for granted. Um, but yeah, it was difficult. But again, that's honestly like m what motivates what I do today, which is kind of the beauty of it. It's like you find the thing that you're kind of missing, or the need that you see is there, and then you pursue that, and like you find that, oh, a lot of people actually also have this need, and so it's kind of this cool thing to get to like bring that all together and see it
Yeah.
blossom.
Yeah. No, that's really beautiful. Um, I'm wondering, is there anything that someone would describe as like a mundane experience, but for some reason that mundane experience sparks your creativity or your imagination? Like there's just something beautiful or more meaningful that you see?
Hmm. I love this question. I don't necessarily know how to answer it. Like the first thing I think of, which is kind of like feels really obvious,
Mm.
is like driving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like whenever I'm driving, I'm like hyper creative. Like I used to have this hour-and-a-half commute, like one way, and I like had some of the most like some of my favorite like spoken word pieces come out of that. I would just like hit voice record and I would just start like talking to my phone while I'm driving. Um, and I think part of that's because even though I'm, focused on driving, I'm less distracted in a lot of ways. And so it's actually like this
Yes.
clear channel for my brain to just like let myself kind of think. And so I started dreading that commute and then I ended up loving the commute because I was like, oh, it's my like writing time. It's my time to like get into it when I normally just don't really make time for that. I don't know if that exactly answers your
No,
question.
that does. I mean, being stuck in an hour and a half long commute sounds pretty mundane. So, and the fact that your imagination would be sparked during that time. But I mean, I think that makes sense. I think a lot of ideas, a lot of creativity, or a lot of creative ideas come to us during like moments like that. Like for me, sometimes it's like when I'm in the shower
Yeah.
or even when I'm laying in bed at night, like trying to go to
Yeah.
sleep. And that's why I do like love my phone so much because I'm the same way. I will like grab my phone and if there's something that comes to my mind, I'm gonna grab and record it and just say it before I forget it.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
to be able to like capture whatever spark just popped up for me. So um
Yeah. There's so my favorite book in the world, it's called Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear. And it talks a lot about inspiration, like how it like strikes you. And it kind of talks about it like it's this little thing that's like floating around and like it'll just like latch on to somebody. And like you kind of have this choice of, oh, am I gonna take that on or am I gonna like give it to the next person?
yeah.
Uh, and so when I do feel like a hint of inspiration, I usually feel like, yeah, I need to act fast. Like, okay, it's here. I need to like write it down. I need to get into it right now. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's like 4 a.m. and I'm just like, no, but also like it's here.
It's here. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna follow that.
Yeah.
My like one song that kind of went like Facebook viral, I wrote at like I woke up at like 4 a.m. and was just had this like idea and I wrote it. And then I like recorded it that morning. I was just like messy hair, like didn't think anyone was even gonna watch it. And then it went like semi-viral and I was like, oh,
Oh, you video recorded it for
huh. Yeah.
okay. Brave, 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 and vulnerable. Um, I don't know if I could do that.
I didn't think anyone was gonna watch.
It was gonna blow
That's
up
the
like
real
it.
deal.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I didn't put a lot of effort into it because I was like, oh, nobody cares. But then apparently people cared about that one. Of
sure.
course, the ones where I'm like trying to be polished, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't land.
Um, Changing gears a little bit, I did want to ask this question. Um, Anyone, if you could collaborate with anyone, dead or
Mm.
alive, who would it be and why?
Oh man, anyone. There's like so many people.
I'm sure I know.
Like if I had to like narrow it down to one person, Mm. That's like it's a really, I don't know. Okay, this feels really weird that this is where my brain is going,
Go ahead, brain.
but for some reason, Freddie Mercury.
Why is that weird?
Just because I
Freddie?
feel like it would be so fun. Like,
Yeah. He
just,
could sing like his voice, like, oh, but tell me
yeah.
why. Tell me why.
But
Yeah.
I think it's funny because like I don't think that our like styles necessarily mesh
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But I just think about like the energy around what that kind of creative project could look like. I'm like, oh, that would just be like it would just be fun. Like I
Yeah.
feel like it wouldn't have to be that serious and we can just like produce weird, expressions and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It definitely would be opposites. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because my stuff is very like mellow,
yeah, soulful, I think.
soulful, yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
chill acoustic vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it is
fresh.
very like that's why I'm like, why is this the person I want to
Yeah. Yeah. But
I don't
Freddie's
know.
great though. Freddie's great.
Maybe
Uh,
it's because it would like stretch it, like it would just make it kind of bring me into a different place than
yeah.
usual.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I like that. Freddie. Um, okay. I know we're coming up on time, so I'm gonna ask you one more question. Um, what is it that you hope people take away from your work, whether it's
Mm.
your music? I know you also do the sound baths as well, the events that you cultivate. Yeah, what do you hope that people take away from your work?
Um, so many things. But I think honestly, like it sounds maybe cliche, but like I really lo would love to like empower other people to share their own things. I think I tend to say that like music expression in general, creativity in general, I think is this like incredible bridge between everything, between like every demographic. And I think that like we kind of underestimate the power of music a lot of times. And so like between just like the way I share my music, like my music tends to be very raw and I'm not necessarily trying to have it be super polished. Like I want it to just feel real because that's how I write. It's just kind of like a journaling experience for me. But then like with the events that I host and that kind of thing, like I just want to cultivate this like culture of like we all have honestly a lot of us have more similarities to everyone than we even realize. And I think that music's a really beautiful way of like exposing that similarity.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, that's beautiful. I think that's one of the reasons I like if you look at my Spotify, I feel like my favorite playlist to listen to is the like global top 50 because I like listening to music from all over the world. And even if I
Yeah.
don't understand what they're saying,
Yeah.
it still creates like this feeling and like it's still emotion still comes up from the music. And I
So
do think
powerful.
yeah, yeah, I think that's like a really beautiful thing about music. You don't even have to speak the same language and you can feel connected to what someone is saying. So,
I'll like literally, I listen to a lot of music in different languages, and I'll literally like just be like overcome with emotion, just like listening to someone like pour their heart out into a song. And it's like, I don't even know what you're singing. It could be about like the dumbest stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm just like, but I feel it.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I never thought about that. I never thought about like, I hope they're saying something that I actually like agree with or align with. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try not to think about that. I'm just gonna
I
enjoy it for what it makes me feel.
think music just makes us all a little more human.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. On that note, I think that's a good place to end on that quote. I do want to ask, like, where can people find you? How can they support you, even if they're not in Austin? Like, is there, yeah, just share the socials. I guess that's what people are doing nowadays. And, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, so everything kind of funnels through my Instagram, which is like terrible probably, but that's just what I do. So, so my Instagram is Annie Rose Co. Co. But I also, like I said, I have this event series that I'm hosting. It's called Earth to Austin, and you can just go to earthtoaustin.com and it'll kind of connect you everywhere you need to go from there. But yeah, I'd
Okay,
love to connect.
perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, Annie. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for the interview. And thank you for again like building the community that you're building in Austin. It really is beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. All right. See y'all.